Hello, my name is Matt Heine, and this is my video reaction to the Unit 4 material. Alright, jumping in. On the first reading, question number 1, which of the 6 rights of copyright holders are you permitting to the publisher to exercise? When looking at the supplemental material on the class website, I decided to go with right number 3, which briefly is to distribute copies of the copyrighted work to the public by sale, rental, lease, and so forth. I feel like you are giving away your exclusive rights by selling your work for $1,000. So I would try and encourage the author to, or the artist, whoever this is, to kind of consider other options instead of just doing a one-time sale of their work. The second question, would you grant the publisher exclusive rights or non-exclusive rights? Again, personally, I would grant the publisher non-exclusive rights for my work in order to try and maximize my total market potential and to try and get my work picked up by various vendors and not just limit myself to a one-time sale of $1,000. Again, here I'm thinking if my work's of some value, I want to try and get the most money for it. That way I can maximize my market availability. Alright, and then the third question, where would I negotiate for better terms in the contract? Well, first off, I would not grant the exclusive rights to my work, only non-exclusive rights. And the reasoning behind this is that unless I was motivated financially to do so, I would not grant exclusive rights. But to me, a $1,000 one-time payment for exclusive ownership of my work, when my work in the contract is projected to be of value for a minimum of 5 years, doesn't really seem like a fair price to me. So I would try and negotiate for something more in favor for me financially. Alright, going on to the second reading. So, which one did I choose here? I went with the music industry sharks reading. And the question number 1 is, what is the recording artist's complaint against their label? The main complaint that I got out of this was that the artist was compensated unfairly for his musical works. He felt that he had been wronged by his record label by not receiving royalties for his music for nearly 20 plus years. He believes that he's owed more financially for his contributions to the music industry for his works that have been rewarded and used throughout time. So the second question, what action has the artist and or label taken with this complaint? Well, I would say that he had thoughtfully written up his thoughts and taken a persuasive picture and then posted to the internet to have it go viral. This is, a good way to get your point out there and to get others behind your cause. He kind of mentioned that his wife, along with some others, have helped him with some legal advice as far as going forward and possibly pursuing a claim against the record label for not paying him his royalties that he seems that he is owed. And then the third question, with the knowledge of just gained in this unit, what would I have done differently if I was in the recording artist situation? Well, I would want to read the contract in full, entirety, and kind of go through it and revise and edit it to how I saw fair and just. I wouldn't want to, screw myself over kind of in this record label scenario where I do all this hard work, put my life out there, and then I feel unjustly compensated for the contributions that I made. So I'd want to go through the contracts and make sure I read them fully and edit any changes I need to kind of work something out that was on fair grounds for both parties. Alright, moving on to the third case, with the Supreme Court case for nonviolence. My notes here. So, question number 1 is, what is the main complaint from this reading? So the main complaint was this reading was, there lied the question of who owned the sculpture that was made. Was it owned by the artist who made it, or was it owned by the city who kind of commissioned it in a sense? There doesn't seem to be a clear consensus because there was no contract signed when this case happened. So the question lying there is, was the sculpture after completion a gift to the city that the city then paid for or compensated the artist for financially and then owned the property? Or did the artist just simply, from direction of the city, develop a piece of artwork which he then kind of lent to the city and then would then later be able to use how he saw fit? All right, so the second question. How would the defendant qualify or not qualify as an employee versus how would the defendant qualify or not qualify as an independent contractor? All right, so for this one, I said he could be considered an employee because he worked collaboratively with the government in order to create or to generate the idea and the image of the project. Through this, it kind of set the terms and tailored in a specific way to the city's desires to better customize the structure for the city. So he was kind of following directions from like a request, a higher order request. So in that sense, he could be seen as an employee of the city. But then on the other hand, he could be seen as a contractor to the project because the city commissioned the idea and the material to be used, but then left the work to kind of come from the imagination of the artist's mind. And so because no blueprint or strict defined contract was set, the final work could be just seen as a display of the artist who would ultimately control the ownership. So he just kind of the seed was planted in the artist's mind of what needed to be done or made, and then he's the guy that made it, so then he gets granted ownership for it. How would I decide the case? I decided that I would grant ownership to the CCNV, even though the contract was not signed and a deal was still made. A transfer of ownership occurred when the sculpture was delivered in person to Washington, and upon the payment of the remainder of the $15,000 which had been agreed upon, then the artist accepted the work to be turned over and full ownership rights to go with it as well. And so because the payment was made and completion of the deal kind of was brought to a close, that's why I believe the CCNV should be granted ownership of the case. Cool. That's it for me for the Unit 4 reaction. I'll catch you later.